You're listening to the Fezcast, the Saracens fans podcast, bringing you the independent and unhinged views of the voices in our heads, as well as those of our special guests. To get in touch with us, find the Fezcast on social media and listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube and more. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our next edition of the Fezcast, which this week is being called Bears on Toast for Saturday Tea Time. And joining me tonight are, we're talking about bear hunting. Well, maybe we're going bird watching now because we've got two Sams. We've got the Communal Garden Sam, who's been on a few times, and then we've got the Lesser Spotted Sam. So, Sam Norris, welcome back to the Fezcast after a bit of a break, but good to see, hear your voice again.
Well, I thought, you know what, you've gone to the extent of trying to get another Sam on. So I thought I'd better come back, really. I did you the original.
Got more Sams than anything else. But there we go. Yeah, look, I mean, last week we heard from a few of the players, Hugh Tizard and Fergus Burke from the men's side. And Fergus, in the discussion I had with the SSA, mentioned the phrase "Bears are our toast," and we didn't make too much of a play of it last week because we didn't want that being pinned up in Bristol Bears changing room. Sam M. I'm going to call you Nickel and Norris. There you go. That's easier that way, isn't it? So Nickel, yeah. I mean, we were a little bit worried that maybe Fergus was being a bit preemptive, but then thank you, Fergus, for our first 3-word review, which was Bears are toast, and there are quite a lot of people who felt the same way. I mean, Kazi Sari, Bears are hunted. Matt Hode, Bears tamed again. Steve T, I like this one. Gummy Bears squashed. And Matt Miller, Bears beated badly. And we gave them a bit of a kicking, didn't we, on the weekend? Again, certainly first 20 minutes, Mickle.
Yes, exactly. It was a very good performance. It was a very much a performance of two halves, which I'm sure we'll dive deeper into as we go along. But they did really, really well. And I think they showed both sides of what we can do. Lovely bit of attacking flair to, first half. And then the second half, we went back to our DNA and what we're known for. And it really was a good performance. But we have got them in our pocket, haven't we? I think I saw a stat. Since we've come back up, we've done the double over them ever since. I think it's about 10 games on the trot. So we seem to have the Bears' number.
Yeah, I know. I mean, Pat Lamb must hate seeing the Saracens team bus turning up, mustn't he, Norris? He's Norris out of Coronation Street, I know. But I mean,
there's plenty of other better Norrises out there.
Norris McWhirter, for those of us.
I thought it was a really enjoyable performance. I thought it was a great performance just purely because it was just so simple. Like, we just seemed to be playing really simple, just a couple out, just finding the gaps. Fergus Beck was great at doing that. We even saw a little tip on from Jamie George, didn't we, as well? Everyone was getting involved. It just wasn't too overcomplicated, and it's just really, really nice to see, because you know what it's been like, well, last 3 or 4 years, really. Sometimes we could just overcomplicate things and we drop the ball, and it's so frustrating because we just know what we can do. It was just actually quite nice to watch a game where we seemed in control for most of it and we're just enjoying the rugby, as Jamie George said afterwards.
Yeah, he did, didn't he? I mean, that comes back to a couple of first half 3-word reviews, Mickle. I'm going to get used to this. The way I've got to do it. SM and SN. I don't understand. But anyway, no, Gareth Baxter said playing with pace, and Ben Hoaxmer, another proper performance. And I think I put that on our WhatsApp group, wasn't it? That was a proper performance. Went out 20 minutes, blew them apart, even though Bristol scored first. And when they scored first, you thought, oh, what's going to happen here? But they came flying back. And I mean, we're going to go through some individual players, but I do think every player on that 23, even Theo McFarlane when he got his yellow after coming on after about 20 seconds, and Marrow's yellow, which we'll talk about a bit later on, it was just a proper performance. they scored the points, they got the lead, and then they earned the right to bring a bit of dog into the second half. And, for rugby purists the world over, you had something for the attacking side and something for the defensive side. And actually, I think probably, Sam M, the team will take as as much, if not more, enjoyment from that defensive display in the second half, which was just out of this world, wasn't it?
It was, and it really harked back, didn't it, to glory years, if you like. And yeah, we dared them. We know what they can do going forward, Bristol, and they're really exciting going forward. And we basically said, all right, what beat us? And that's what we did. And that was a really, really impressive. And, like you say, I thought it was a complete team performance to a certain extent. I would argue, well, it's a matter of fact that, yes, they went in front, the Bears did at the start, but it was an error on our part that let them in and an error that got them their second. So their first two tries was our own undoing. But then after that, we buckled down. And yeah, first half, we really looked like we was going to take off. And it was Austin Healy on comms, wasn't it, that if the Bears don't buckle up and start making a tackle, this could become a cricket score. But we actually changed tack second half. And yeah, we just said, beat us. And they couldn't. And I think we'll take great heart from that over the next couple of weeks, really. It was a superb performance.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to go back to a couple of 3-word reviews, Sam, in, because there were a couple of little whinges, and justifiable whinges, but I'm going to see what you think, but I'm going to put my finger. The first one was Alan said, Itoje yellow again. And I mentioned Theo McFarlane got a yellow. I haven't got a problem with it because they were under pressure and they did what they did. And from that, we still went under 14. And yeah, Bristol might have got a couple of late tries, but they had to work so hard for it that they were never, ever going to get back into the game. So yeah, forward players in a game like that getting a yellow, taking one for the team. I haven't got too much of a problem with that at all.
No, I'm with you on that one, and I think you take Itoje as a great example of a player that plays on the edge. If you play on the edge, sometimes you slip one side, sometimes you slip the other. And would you want to change him as a player? Absolutely not. And I think if you accept the greatness of Itoje, you've got to accept that sometimes that's just going to go a little bit over in the other direction. And he wouldn't be the player he is without the occasional yellow that will pop up. Yeah, okay, does he get more than most? Possibly, but it's because he pushes himself and he goes to the absolute limit. And that, to me, is the sign of a great player, a great captain, and somebody that will give 125% every single game for the team. So, yeah, as far as I'm concerned, fair play. We've all been in teams, haven't we, where you've got a couple of guys that would do that and always take one for the team. And he's the captain, and he did the ultimate sacrifice and took one for the team there.
He did, and then what was interesting was that he wasn't the most penalised player for Saracens. It was Ben Earl was the most penalised player. And Ben does exactly the same sort of thing as Murrow. And, occasionally he gets to the wrong side of the referee, and I'm sure we will discuss Mr. Ridley in a little bit more depth a little bit later on in this podcast. The other slightly negative 3-word review came from Rue Crawford, who said, need a kicker. And yeah, Fergus Burke didn't have the greatest day off the kicking tee. But then again, pretty much like Murrow getting yellows, I'm not going to be too fussed if during the game, Sam in, he's making breaks like he did. The break he put through. I mean, Tom Jordan showed, got his Matador's cape out, didn't it? Just let it go through on, hey! And, then he drew the man and put Rhodesy Shegan in under the posts. But he was finding gaps. So, yeah, okay, he might have left 4 or 6 points out there with some missed kicks. But his play gave us 10 points at least.
I've been so impressed with how Burke has handled this season with Faz coming back, because I think last season was difficult for him. He had to step into Faz's shoes, probably one of the most difficult tasks in Saracens playing history. Had to move countries as well, just to make it a bit more tricky, and also negotiate being called up for his national team. So he had a lot on last year. This year, the boy returns, and suddenly everyone, if you're Fergus Burke, you're thinking, oh, for God's sake, I've come over here and I want to play some rugby. And now look what's happened. He's worked his way back into the team on merit. I think he is currently a better 10 than Faz. He's finding gaps, but he's a different player to Farrell. And we're starting to figure out, I mean, him and Bracken have created a quality little halfback pair in there, haven't they? And we've just got, I mean, Thomas Williams coming, he's doing the same thing. Oh, for God's sake, I'm coming over, and now we've got Charlie Bracken who's playing out of his socks every game. I think the two of them work really well together. They've got that symbiosis that you want from a 9 and a 10. And yeah, I've been so impressed with how Fergus Burke not only plays, but just how he's handling himself in terms of just dealing with. He's the ultimate, just like quiet assassin. He doesn't talk. He doesn't want to talk, even on the pitch, because he's just pointing. And the players want to play around him. Players enjoy playing off him. And I think I really hope he doesn't go anywhere. I hope he's got a long, long career in front of him playing for Saracens. He's our 10 now, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, I think it worked quite well, Sam M, in so much as that, and I think this is the way it goes. And I think this has given the last couple of games, Ivan Van Zyl in particular, a bit of a new lease of life, because the pressure's not on Ivan now to drive that team forward. He's got Charlie Bracken doing that. But then you're turning around to Ivan Van Zyl and saying, there you go, it's 15 minutes, we've got that lead. You do what you do. Be that defensive scrum half. And then you got Owen Farrell who's turned around and can change the game. And, we went from running it quick and everything, then suddenly giving the Bristol back free kittens because Faz was putting the ball on a tee for Noah Kalori to get up there and, resulted in a yellow card for the big Fijian who, he's a physical specimen, that Bristol winger, and he couldn't cope with Noah Kalori. So it's great that these guys with that experience can come on, because full well that they're going to read the game from the moment they hit the field. They're not going to have a couple of minutes to get to the speed of the game. They know what's needed, and bang, you've got a lead. You've got Charlie Bracken who's run the team all around the park and everything, and suddenly Ivan and Faz come on, shore it up and do what they do, and it works a treat, doesn't it?
It really does. At the moment, what we're asking Ivan to do, and in particular Faz, is perfect for this stage in his career and where he is. It really does lend itself to that old school, defend and defend the lead. And as I mentioned on the group chat, what's his name, Ibatoye, the winger who went off injured, who was on Noah's wing defending it, he doesn't like it up in the air at the best of times, and that's from a very good friend of mine who's a Bears season to get older. So I'm thinking second half, we're going to bring Faz on and we're going to make do with that. It was unfortunate that it was going into the sun, but then that's why they switched the big Fijian lad and put him on the other wing to do it. But coming back to what, as you say, what we're asking those two to do is fantastic. But I'm really excited coming back to the Thomas Williams thing. Yeah, he's coming over and there's Bracken there. Whoever's starting, it's not going to, that pace isn't going to drop, is it? Because Thomas Williams is 100 miles an hour, and Charlie Bracken, the speed of it, you're going to take one off right when one's had enough, or he's blowing and he's done, and you're going to bring another on. So that's next season. But I will come back to, and I'm not being negative at all, but with the kicking thing, we have left a lot of points out there, conversions this year, and I think if you come down to it, it has hurt us. But Fergus will find his way. He seems to make the more difficult ones. I don't know about you guys, but you'll look at one and he'll be right on the corner and you think he's not making that, and he pings it right in the middle. And the easier ones he seems to miss. But I'm sure that's going to come with time and, as he develops. But he brings something, as you say, that no one else does. And Fergus at 10, Charlie at 9, and Ollie at 12. That speed and pace through there, I can't remember the last time we've had that. I don't think, it's the modern game and it's the way it's going. And yeah, that's great. And then, like you say, you bring on those two and it's working a treat.
What I was most impressed, though, I will just say before we move on about what Farrell did when he came on at standoff, was that, yes, they're playing a more kind of defensive game, but it was a defensive attack game. If you looked at what Sale did on the weekend, and they got a good win, Sale did, but it was all about George Ford putting him in the slot and he was going to go for a drop goal, which I find is really negative. And I don't like it at all because it's showing no ambition. Faz came on and, you've got an absolute massive weapon out wide, but he was using it and it was attacking defence, and that makes a huge difference going forward. But, Sam, you mentioned one of the guys who's got a couple of really good 3-word reviews, but Sam, we've not heard from you about him yet. But Carway said Ollie Hartley again, and Ollie says, not Ollie Hartley, it's another Ollie obviously, but he says Hartley keeps stepping, and Ollie Hartley has stepped into that 12 shirt got to run now. And looks to the manor born, doesn't he, Sam N?
I am a big fan of Ollie Hartley. Do you know what? We've when big players leave Saracens, I think one of our biggest issues that we've had is that we try and replace them with the same type of player. And we've been trying to replace Brad Barrett for too long. And in Ollie Hartley, we have a completely different player, but somebody that can play exceptionally well with our 9 and 10 axis. And the three of them together are class. And it's actually a shame that Burke decided to go for Scotland because at one point, at what point could you say we might have the 9, 10, and 12 for England as well? I think Ollie's got to be knocking on the door soon. That step is insane, isn't it? Absolutely ridiculous. I think he lost the cameraman about 3 times during the course of that game. Brilliant. And also he hasn't had the easiest of like races, has he? It hasn't been an easy curve. He's had setbacks, he's had injuries, he's had problems. He's had to go against Tompkins, then there'll be someone else coming in. And he just keeps coming back and back and back. And now he's had this run in the team. Everyone is finally seeing what we've seen glimpses of. But the guy's class, and he is again, I've said it about Burke being our starting 10 now. Hartley's probably put himself as one of the top 3 or 4 players on that team sheet in terms of who you're nailing on. I'm really excited for the run into the end of the season to see what else he can do. But I'm really excited again for next season with these 3 going at it from the start. I think we've got a good 3 there, and yeah, Hartley's just class. He's absolute class.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about replacing big name centres or big name players and everything. Perhaps we finally found the replacement for Philippe Seller, Sam M.
Oh yes, finally. It's taken a long time, hasn't it? Oh my, yes, definitely.
But he has. He's got that same sort of thing, isn't he? And another French centre
really
reminds me. Yeah, another French centre reminds me of hugely is Yannick Yosignon from a few years back. Big physical specimen, but with some skills and some strength. Beat tackles with brute force, but also goal, which is great to see. However, I mean, the player of the match on the day, Sam M, was Tom Willis, and yeah, you can understand why. Tom behind, I think we talked about it on our WhatsApp group. We were sort of saying, Alfie Barbery's coming in, he's a good player, but is he going to be a Tom Willis? Well, Tom Willis has probably got claim to being the best 8 in the world at the moment, certainly in the club game. And one of the things, what we will say is that if you put any number 8, any half decent number 8, behind a pack that was doing what Saracens pack was doing first half an hour in that game, I think I could still go back out there 30 years after and still look good at 8. I know I would, but that's in my own lunchtime, as it were. But Tom has got all the credit, but it was because of the pack ever in front of him. We've already talked about Maro Itoje, but the man who's got most love on the 3-word reviews, Steve Cummins, Tizard marches on. James Unite, Tizard was class. Ollie again, Tizard consistently great. I mean, Hugh Tizard, another player who perhaps should be on the knockings for England, and another player who's got someone coming to the club, a big name in George Martin, who's come back to Leicester Tigers and hit the ground running, who's going to put some pressure on his place again. But Hugh steps. I mean, his try was absolutely superb, but that came after a number of occasions where I think I put it on the on our WhatsApp group, didn't I? It says Hugh Tizard doing George Cruz things and then doing things that George Cruz could never do.
Yeah, exactly. You've hit the nail right on the head. I remember when we brought him over. I mean, he was a big lad to start with, but he put a lot of muscle and condition on. And we wanted to make him another George Cruz. We wanted to put him into that mould. And it comes back to what Sam N said. We use that. In that we've always tried to replace like-for-like players. And Hugh was fantastic. Tom is Tom and was fantastic and great, but I thought that was very lazy man of the match on Saturday. It was Hugh all day long. It really was. He was fantastic. He's been solid all year. Reliable, dependable, absolutely fantastic. And it's funny about you saying bringing George Martin in. I think we're going to try and make George Martin a 6, if you want my opinion. And I think he's going to be the heavy ball carrier, not Barbary. But that's a conversation for another day. But you can't leave Hugh out the side. Definitely not. And he's been absolutely solid all year. And it's funny you say around the England thing, because he was knocking on the door, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty certain he made a few squads while Eddie Jones was still there. Eddie Jones spotted it. And yeah, since Bothwick's come in, he's not had a look. But all that's our gain and everyone else's loss. But yeah, he's been solid, was fantastic, and he was the best player on the pitch at the weekend for me.
Yeah, and another player, I mean, you mentioned there George Martin playing blindside. I thought another player who really did impress on the weekends, and he always does very quietly, goes about his business, but he's very effective. And played at six, a bit like Courtney Laws used to play a few years ago. Nick Ezekwe had a massive game, Sam Norris.
Yeah, and do you know what we're talking about? Players that, because we see them week in, week out, like Sam M said, it's sometimes lazy commentary to just give the man of the match to the guy that's made the most hits or whatever it is. You know, Hugh Tizard quietly went about his business. Ezekwe quietly went about their business. You know, you think of one of the greatest of all time, Richard Hill, never got the plaudits he deserved because he was quiet in games in terms of he didn't do the big flash stuff. You know, Neil Back was dropping goals whilst Richard Hill was removing people's tonsils when no one was looking. and I think, you know, Ezekwe, it comes under that kind of banner as well. I think Tizard does too. They are the engine room. They're the ones that create the space, create the momentum for the Brackens, the Hartleys to get those gaps to move the ball about. And you know, they play as much a part as those players do in that fun stuff that goes on afterwards. They've created that by doing the stuff that no one else really wants to do. They're getting their hands dirty. They're getting, you know, the bloody eyes and the bloody noses and whatnot. Ezekwe is that perfect squad player. Ezekwe, actually, we'll do another comparison. Ezekwe is a little bit like a Jackson Ray for me, insofar as he never really stoops below a certain level. You can always rely on him to come on or start and do a job. Always been a big fan of Nick. And again, another player that probably hasn't had as many England caps as he deserves.
Yeah, I totally agree with you there. Now, before we take a little break and come back and discuss refereeing performances and whatever, because it does have to be spoken about, John Barron gave us one last 3-word review about one of the players, and he said George was imperious. And I mean, Jamie George is coming up towards the start of his last season as a professional rugby player, but there's no drop-off, is there, in his talents? And the little tip pass round the corner that sets up one try. Champagne moment, Sam M. Champagne moment.
No one else can do it better than him. Austin put it on comms, didn't he? And he said he actually had 2 of them, didn't he? And no one else can do that. It is vintage, and he's enjoying his rugby, and you can see that. Yeah, again, that comes back to, you know, they're just enjoying themselves now, and I think the pressure's off. And that's a dangerous side, isn't it? In playing as they want, free flowing, and yeah, we've got to chase it. We're not there to be shot down. And he actually said, didn't he, the other week? Was it the Gloucester game where he was on comms? He was like, "We're actually enjoying not being there to be shot at." And yeah, I think it's great, but it's going to be a sad day when the end of next year when he calls it a day.
Will do indeed. Right, let's take a break there. And we'll come back. And I mean, Christoph Ridley, he is a friend of mine on Facebook, and I do always tag him into these when I post them and everything. But Christoph, now's the time to go make a cup of tea if I were you.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Hello, this is Akina Gondwe of Saracens Women, and you're listening to the Fezcast, and we are both proudly sponsored by the Saracens Supporters Association. For a £10 annual subscription to the SSA, you'll get the chance to buy tickets for away matches, receive a regular newsletter, and an exclusive SSA badge. They also arrange pre-match gatherings and player-coach events. As well as sponsoring both me and the Fezcast, they also sponsor Louis Johnson from the men's team and the Saracens Foundation Track Club. Not bad for 10 quid. You can join up at membermojo.co.uk/SSA. Enjoy the rest of this edition of the Fezcast, and I look forward to seeing you at StoneX. Come on, you Sarries.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody, to the second part of our Fezcast for this week. Following on from the Bears result on the weekend, and yeah, great result, but could have gone badly wrong. And unfortunately, the merry whistleblower, Mr. Ridley, has come in for a little bit of criticism, shall we say, on our 3-word reviews. First off, John Barron says, Timu Wayne Bards. And Ollie, again, said, surely a red. And yeah, there were a couple of rickets that Christoph made. Now, I like Christoph Ridley. I think he's a good referee. There's a lot of people who'll say that we never get the best of him, but there's also an awful lot of Bears fans on social media and everything complaining about how bad he was for them. So, like we said the week before with Carl Dixon, where we said he was bad for both sides, it would appear that Christoph Ridley's not impressed anybody. However, I'm going to put it down to a bad day at the office. And I hope it is a bad day at the office, Sam N, because, there were 2 rickets. The Harry Randall drop at the base of the scrum that he allowed to play on, which resulted in a try that was dragged back. And I think he didn't want to listen to the TMO on that one. He decided it, and it was so clearly dropped forward. Well, it's a scrum half. He's dropped the ball. I mean, 99.99 times out of 100, they call that immediately they see the ball being dropped. That was not great, but the decision not to even award a penalty for Joe Batley headbutting Maro Itoje dangerously. I mean, you looked at it, you saw Maro's got, and his gum shields come flying out. The guys looked at him, there's no arms. He's going to have, if they haven't cited it, they ought to cite it, because that was a red card, and Batley needs a ban for that, because that was an act of, I'm not going to say malicious, because I don't think any player does do that, but it was a moment of dangerous stupidity. And if we've got any pretension of protecting players from serious injuries like that, those sort of things have to be dealt with at the time. And when the TMO calls you back and says, look at this, and he then turns around and says, I don't see any foul play, I'm sorry, somebody from the Referees Association needs to sit him down with that video and say, really, can you explain your thought processes about that one? Because I think you got that one wrong.
Yeah, look, any player walk off the pitch after having a bad game knowing that they've had a bad game. I'm sure Christoph was just the same. He'll probably be the first to admit that it wasn't his finest match in charge of, in the Premiership. But just for me, just some of the decisions just didn't make sense. And I know we've said a couple of the Bears fans, have come out in arms as well. But we were talking about it during the game. Just it felt like he was desperately trying to keep Bears in the game. And I know that isn't the case, but it just felt like it so much. And that was what I didn't get about him, because he's not one of those. He's not a victim, who we just think is trash and is a crap referee. Shouldn't be refereeing. But Christoph is a good referee, like you say. It just felt really peculiar to watch, because generally he's on top of things, and he just felt like he just lost control and didn't know what was going on half the time. But we'll put it down to a bad game, because as you say, Jez, he is actually one of the better ones, so we should probably be as nice as we can. And we did win.
Yeah, we did win. I mean, I think if we'd lost that game, Sam M, we might have had a very different view of it. And I mean, I'm sat here as a West Ham fan after watching VAR rob us of a point against Arsenal yesterday, and referees and referees assistants and the guys in the video trucks are not my best friends at the moment. But I mean, I think everybody's entitled to have a bad day at the office, and the hope is that if you do that, as Sam's just said, you sit down and you're honest in your review. And I'm sure you probably have sat down with Mark McCall or Maro Itoje or whoever from Saracens, like you would have sat down with Pat Lam, and both of them would have turned around and said, quite possibly, well, are you sure you had your best game, Christoph?
Yeah, it was a strange one. It really was. He is one of the better ones, as you say, and I agree with Sam N. It seemed like he was trying to keep the Bears in the game, to me. And obviously, coming back to my friend who I was texting at the time, and he's went, we're in trouble here. He's gone, and that's a Bears season ticket holder. Everyone saw it. I think the TMO tried more than once to point out, you've got to keep looking at this, and he wasn't having any of it. So, yeah, I think you guys have covered it. We've put it down to a bad day at the office. If he doesn't get cited, that's the bigger injustice to me. Because there was no intent there to rap and everything like that. And yeah, it was a bad call, a bad day. We move on. And yeah, we
And
won. So yeah.
I mean, that's the funny thing, though, isn't it? I'll come to you, Sam Norris, on this one, because what we often say is that we got referees now, and Carl Dixon is a prime example of it. Matt Cardy kind of falls into it on occasion where they know they've got the TMO there. So they don't have to make the big decisions because they've got the TMO there. Christoph's gone the other way there, and he said, I've made a decision. And I don't care what the TM say. I am confident in my decision. And even if they turn around to him and show Joe Batley taking a baseball bat to Maro Itoje, I think in that situation, he said, I know what I've seen. And he wasn't. So, there's a balance between using the TMO too much, but also using the TMO when you have made a rickets and not seeing it as a personal affront to you or anything like that. Just saying, look, you're allowed to make a mistake. I think I've mentioned this story many times before when I was refereed by a guy, Steve Pountney, who I criticised him in a game where he'd made one or two mistakes. He said, well, how many mistakes did your team make? And you had a good game because you won by 40 points. So the one mistake, but the trouble is when a mistake is so huge like that, it's going to get magnified, it's going to get picked up, and it's going to be, the water cooler moment on every podcast going, isn't it?
That's it. I think that is the strange thing. And, Sam Evans picked up on it as well. It just felt peculiar because it was almost like you were watching an argument kind of play out live on television where the TMO couldn't turn around and go, mate, you're wrong. Like, come on. He had to say it in a certain way. They've obviously been given guidance on how they need to speak to one another. And it was just really odd. It was like watching mum and dad have an argument without them wanting to know that you're having an argument. And I don't know, he obviously had something going on. And look, I don't want to say that this is the reason, but everyone has stuff that goes on in their private life. Maybe he's just had a bad week and something's going on and he just wasn't at the top of his game. And sometimes things trigger you. And that's what it just felt to me. Like he was not in the right frame of mind to be refereeing that game almost. And like you say, when you've got that help there, accept it and go, you know what, this is great. The pressure's off me. I don't have to make these decisions all the time. And I just cannot get over how weird it is. I can't remember, and I criticize referees fairly frequently, but I can't remember a game that felt that weird. I don't know if you guys can think back on either this season or previous seasons where it's been such a strange refereeing performance.
It's funny you say that because I picked up on it yesterday, and we know it's our favourite yesterday was refereeing the Exeter Bath game, but the incident, I don't know if you guys have watched the game where was it Quinn Rue smashes into Henry Slade, and for all day long it was it looked like a red card, but you had the TMO initially not going that way and both the ref's assistants saying no, we think it's a yellow, he's taken a step, but Dixon say no, I'm seeing it like this, boom boom boom. And I wonder whether, I don't know, the powers that be have had a chat with the refs and saying, no, you're in control. Take control of it. Because it was a very similar situation that, that around him and his assistants were saying no, or a different story. But no, this is my decision and I'm sticking with it. So I don't know if that's something to do with it. So
I think it's quite interesting, isn't it? I think it's something that rugby union and football haven't quite got right, where rugby league and cricket have got it right. And they're all sports that use extra, third umpires, television, match officials, whatever it may be. It seems to me, I watched the rugby league, Warrington versus Hulkinson Rovers, and there's a couple of moments where they had captain's challenges, where they bring in the TMO to have a look at it. And he's got 3 options. And he talks you through it, and it's literally, he'll have 2 or 3 reviews, and he'll either say, yeah, I agree, no, I disagree, or I can't prove it either way, so therefore we'll just stick with what the on-field decision is. Okay, that's great. Cricket's very much down the line. They've got the technology, and the technology says Hawkeye says this, it's done this, done that. Right, bang, we've got our decision, moved on. Rugby union, and football, they seem to look at things far too long. I think they should limit it and say, if the TMO's turned around and said, right, look, you need to look at this. It's like when you see VAR, as soon as they send the referee to the monitor, it's going to be overturned. The TMO's come in and said, I've seen something. You don't have 5 minutes of us discussing it. The referee turn around and say, okay, fair enough. I'll take your view on that because you're looking at better than me. Don't even look at the review. The TMO comes in and says, I've got my decision. You need to give a red card. You need to give a yellow card. You let it go. And that would improve it and speed it up a whole lot more, I think, Sam.
Yeah, we do the silly thing where it's like almost like VAR. They go, Christoph, go and have a look at the big screen, will you? It's like, no, you've got a screen. You've already seen it. Just tell him what he needs to do. It doesn't need to be a mothers' meeting. It doesn't need to be a committee. You just need the guys that are sitting upstairs. You've got all the camera angles you need. By that stage, you've probably reviewed it a couple of times. You've made a decision. Just tell. I don't know whether it is something to do with what Sam M says, is where the referees on the field are almost given that additional power to see the game as it plays out. But surely that doesn't make any sense when you've got people up in the sky that have got all the angles. They are in a better position to make that decision. Also, they're not run ragged and fatigued because they've had to run around a rugby pitch for 80 minutes as well. They're sitting there with a cup of whatever, Lucozade or other sports drinks, and they're relaxed and they're in a much better position to make that decision. Why isn't it that the TMO can go, Christoph, it's a red card here, mate. We've reviewed it. We've made the decision. Can you just give it? We'll explain to you whilst as he's walking off.
Yeah,
job done.
Brilliant. Yeah, as ever, as I always say, we're available for consultancy and we're very cheap. Basically, it's a debenture that we can share between us at Twickenham. We should be happy with that, shouldn't we? Let's have a break there because it's beginning to overshadow what is a great performance and everything like that. And we'll come back and have a quick look at the season going forward because there is, well, Matt Williamson says, bring on Exeter. There's a couple of small matters before that, isn't there?
Hey, it's Charlie Hodgson, and you are listening to the Fezcasts.
This is the Fezcast.
Right, okay, well, let's carry on with the Fezcast Part 3, and got a couple of things to brush up on the men's game before we talk about Women's Six Nations in the last part. First off, as I said, Matt Williamson's 3-word review was bring on Exeter. And yeah, it is shaping up quite nicely. I mean, okay, Bath could have done us a favour and then didn't, but, that's the way it goes. I'm sure Bath would they rather face Exeter at home than a Saracens that flying like we are now, and from being beaten by
on a 6-game win streak. They don't want any part of us, Bath, coming in on us off, because that's what we've got to do, isn't it? Let's be honest. It's a 6-game win streak. They don't want us.
Yeah, no, and absolutely. So, but before we get to Exeter, Sam, we've got a small matter of Gloucester and Queens at home. And, well, I mean, Gloucester missing their star player, Thomas Williams, now who's out injured. So please, Gloucester, send him up the A4 and round the M25 and we'll look after him from here now and get him ensconced in. But, you'd expect them to be whipping boys. And again, Queens, but then Queens had just come off of a thrashing of Newcastle Falcons, which puts light to everybody saying that there shouldn't be relegation because Newcastle Falcons, I mean, they just, with all the money they've got coming in their club this year and everything like that, they've been absolutely awful. And, who should come up and replace them? It's a different question. But Newcastle Falcons aren't adding anything to the Premiership at the moment. To get beaten by that much by a Quins side, so and we know what Quins do against us because it's their cup final, isn't it? Last game of the season for them, they can go out and could properly screw up our season, couldn't they, Sam?
This is clearly, Sam. Me and you are not allowed on a podcast again together because it just confuses chairs too much.
It confuses me when it's Duncan and Matt, but there you go.
Well, that I understand. That makes a lot more sense. If we're gonna pick if we're gonna pick the next 2 games, taking Newcastle out of the equation, you'd pick 2 home games one against Gloucester, one against Quins, wouldn't you? So if any of the other teams in the top 6 were going to pick their next 2 games, they pick the 2 that we've got. So if we don't get into a position where we can potentially, I mean, it is out of our hands to a certain degree because Exeter have got to drop a few points, but ultimately it's looking like Exeter have got to play Leicester. Leicester aren't going to want to do Exeter any favours. So we are looking like we're heading to another showdown, but one that probably is a bit more important at the end of the season at Sandy Park, because we've got to look at these next 2 games and say if we don't get 10 points from these next 2 games, we've mucked it up for ourselves, really. So we get another 10 points. We see what Exeter do. We could be heading down to Sandy Park, you know, doing the unthinkable. You know, what we think about during the Six Nations, what we were discussing. We never thought in a million years we were going to make the playoffs. So we could be going down to Sandy Park, of all places, to try and have a go at the Chiefs and knock them off fourth spot. And wouldn't that be blooming good? It's just a shame that Goody couldn't come on last minute and kick a goal over to win it.
I mean, it will be a complete hunting if we do it, but I mean, let's put my glass half full head on here and everything. It would be possibly the most Saracens thing in the world to do, to go out and thump Gloucester proper royally in our next game, and then allow Quins to come to Stonex and completely piss all over our cornflakes.
Well, yeah, there is that. But when was the last time they came to Stonex? Because it's always been at Tottenham, hasn't it, for the last few years? So, and they've done us the last 3 games, haven't they? So, yeah, you'd like to think next weekend is a 5-pointer, especially with Williams injured, all joking aside, and no disrespect to them. And then, yeah, that it's a sticky wicket with Quins, but yeah, at the Stonex for the first time in a while, how we're playing, it's in our hands, and then we can go down and shut Rob Baxter up.
It would be lovely, wouldn't it? I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, Baxter's come out, and I mean, I think fair dues to Baxter that, things might be taken slightly out of context of what he said and everything like that. And I mean, I think the idea is that they would love to finish Saracen season in the same way that, as we've just mentioned there, we'd love to finish Chiefs season. It's great that at the end of the season we could still potentially have that peril of that 4th place, because that makes that game huge. I mean, it's going to be the one that's on the telly, isn't it? It's going to be the one that's, that people will want to go to. It'll be sold out. There'll be, so much interest. And that's what makes the playoffs good, is because it's not dead. I mean, the bottom of the league is dead. I mean, Newcastle Falcons are in Barbados or wherever they go on their holidays, or Seaton Carew or wherever it is, whatever beach they go on, and, have shown no honour whatsoever in their performances, and that's that end of the thing. But the top end, where the class is, and as you say, Sam, 6 weeks ago, we were sort of sat there jokingly saying, season's over. Dave Loxton said it, Duncan said it, season's over. Well, all we ask is, one, that the guys play with some fun and some freedom and some expression, which they've done, and give themselves a shout. And yeah, it might paper over a few cracks that we should never have been in this position in the first place, but now we're here. This is what we've got to do, and we're doing it, aren't we?
We are, and this is all we asked for, isn't it, a few weeks ago, is fight, and let's see it, and let's just play with freedom and just go out there and leave it all on the table. And so far, 3 games later, they are. We can ask for no more than that. And as you say, coming off, just playing without fear. Yeah, Exeter have got to go to Leicester. And if I'm honest with you, even though we beat them, a couple of weeks ago, that's a team I don't think anyone wants, is Leicester at the moment. I just think they're physical. They're a really good side. Bath, I think, have been broken by Bordeaux. I think Leicester showed you how to beat Northampton at the weekend. Very nice going forward, and when they get a quick lead. But if they don't get a quick lead and they get it put up them, they disappear and they're not to be seen. So it's all to play for. And I just think it's written in the stars that it is going to be a quarter-final, if you like, at Sandy Park to see who gets that last spot. So, yeah, we can dream.
Yeah, what will be interesting is, I think that Leicester Tigers, as I say, they're going to go to play Exeter Chiefs with the possibility that they could overtake Bath for second place, and indeed even still, I think, could overtake Northampton for first place. So that home semi-final is still up for grabs for them. And you're right, I think they are the team that everybody's going to be fearing at the moment. They really are motoring. I mean, the only other bit of jeopardy is which South African's going to punch Henry Pollock first, isn't it? Because, I mean, he's come close on a couple of occasions. It's quite interesting. I've got a couple of friends of mine at work who are Saints fans, and we were talking about it. And so you don't ever want to change a player's, the enthusiasm. He's a character and whatever and like that. And a lad from Banbury, where I live as well. So, I mean, I've got to support him and everything. But if you compare him and Noah Kalori, who are very much, similar stages of their career. Perhaps Henry's a little bit further ahead, being on a Lions tour, in the England squads and everything like that. But Noah Kalori's got the possibility to get a bit big-headed and everything. But he's got Owen Farrell, and he's got Elliot Daly, and he's got Maro Itoje, are all in his ear, keeping him level-headed, keeping him on the ground. Henry Pollock ain't got that at Saints. And, Courtney Laws, if Courtney Laws was still at Saints, he'd have that. He'd have that senior player turning around and telling them, look, mate, don't change the way you play. We love your enthusiasm, but you've got to learn to put it into your game, not into the rest of it.
This is the thing with that lad. He looked an absolute, can I say prat? But he looked a prat at the weekend coming on. Was upsetting everyone. Ollie Chesham, he's diving in. I've yet to see him have a good game when it's not going for them.
Yeah.
And when they need to come from, I think it's Northampton on the whole. When it's not going their way and it's not that free-flowing attacking ball, if someone gets into them and gets into them early, they disappear and fade very quickly. And he looks an idiot at the weekend. And he's got a lot of, as you have touched on, Jez, and I'm sure your mates at work will have said, he's got a lot of stick in the press this weekend because he isn't endearing at the minute. He's looking a bit of a wally, shall we say.
Yeah. So. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? And I think, actually, funny enough, the point that everybody works out that you need to get in to Saints is, even though, it was that game at Spurs, they went their way, but we were expecting Saints to come and play us all over the park. And funny, from that game, we've improved. The Saints have gone backwards. Perhaps we're the ones who're showing them the way. Right. That's all to look forward to. We'll have a quick break there, and then we'll come back and quickly discuss Women's Six Nations. Well, basically, Marlie Packer, really, isn't it?
Hi, this is Petrus Duplessis, and you are listening to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
Well, welcome back, everyone, to our last part, and we're just going to finish off with a little bit of a chat. And I mean, I feel really sorry for the women Six Nations, because I think, as we said 6 weeks ago, when Saracens were looking like, we could be just sort of like on the beach with everybody else, that we would have been putting an awful lot more into the Women's Six Nations. But the Women's Six Nations has been pretty good, and is boiling up to be a really nice finish, because you've got a few games where people are going to shuffle themselves into where they are. So you've got Wales, have got Italy, is it, I think. Scotland have got Ireland, all of those. I mean, Scotland have been atrocious this Six Nations, so they've got to play for some pride. Wales are going to want to get a win under their belt. Italy, as they showed against England, have probably improved more than any other team in line with their men's team. But England, again, were mightily impressive. And, even watching the game, with a referee doing a bit of a Christoph Ridley and kind of evening it up a little bit to Italy, because they could see that Italy were going to get blown away at one point. And so they started getting away with a few more things that we shouldn't have done. But you've got to say, mention Saracens players. I'm going to mention the three Saracens players. One who wasn't on the pitch, and she needs to start against France. I don't know if she's injured or carried it or not, but Jess Breach, Claudia McDonald, I think she's a great player. Mia Venner, Emma Singh. Jess Breach is world class, and there's a couple of occasions where gaps were given and everything, and Jess would have exploited that on the weekend. Zoe Harrison is human after all. I mean, she missed a kick after Katie Daly-McLean had gone on and said, she'll never miss a kick. Then missed an easy one, but then continued and just slotted kick after kick after kick, but also played some beautiful, beautiful rugby. But it's the young girl at the open side. Or was she 21, 22? Marlie Packer. No, she's 35, 36 now. She is playing like she's 21, 22, though, Sam Norris. And, has now gone into second place on her own on a try scoring record after scoring 4 tries in the weekend. I mean, she's an absolute... You would forgive Marlie after going for the last World Cup, where she didn't get much game time, to have gone, okay, fair enough, whatever. That girl's got a drive on her. And you've mentioned him already once before. She's got a drive on her the same as Richard Hill. And if you've ever read Richard Hill's autobiography, where he talks about coming back from a knee ligament transplant that very nearly killed him, despite being a Rugby World Cup winner, despite being a British Lion twice over and everything, to still come back and play for Saracens after that. She's got that same dedication and determination. And, everybody's saying is she going to be around the next World Cup. She'll be around for the next World Cup and probably the one after it.
Yeah, I think, you get the body starts giving out, but the heart and the head is still right there. You forget, Marlie's actually seen a really interesting transition within the women's game. She's been the heartbeat of that England team for such a long time. Do you think she just wants to roll over and be like, yeah, I'll let some other kid take my position now? She it's very similar. The weird situation that we're in, where we know that Jamie George is retiring at the end of next season, like months and months and months before even the start of it. Jamie will cherish every moment that he's on the pitch. Same with Marlie. She knows that she's getting towards the end. She knows that at some point she's not going to be able to do these things anymore because she won't have a club and she won't be playing rugby anymore. So for her to go out and do what she did at the weekend, it isn't surprising because she still has that drive. She's never going to lose it till the second she is no longer officially a rugby player. And you see it all the time, players that are coming to the end of their career having that touch of class, and the commentary saying it's a vintage performance. That's what they say, don't they? With the players that come towards the end of their careers doing something like that, absolutely awesome. She's a Saracen. That's what Saracens do when they play for England.
I mean, I Maiden song, Sam. I don't know if you're Sam M. I don't know if you're a heavy metal fan or anything, but I Maiden did a song called "Die with Your Boots On," and I mean, she is one of those players that she'll get dragged off of that field in a box. But she won't want to leave that field, will she? I mean, her love of the game is infectious, and we said it time and time and time again that young players in that squad, and there's a lot of young players in that squad now, because of injury, they've been given their chance. The girl on the blind side, I'm sure, is it? And Burns have come in, and Abby Byrne, who's a bit more established player, but she's making her way. She's been having to wait her chance. They're going to look at Marlie Packer and going to say, that's what I want to be when I'm 35, 36 years old. And I want to have scored 712 tries for England. And I want 240 caps or whatever it is. It's just, I mean, there are some players that transcend their sport. And Marlie Packer has transcended women's rugby.
Hasn't she just? And to answer your question, yes, I am a heavy metal fan, so I do know what you're referencing. But yeah, it's just... Yeah, it comes back to just the dedication and everything, and a superb role model and an absolute having a bit of an Indian summer, and start them all because good things happen.
Well, they do, don't they? And I mean, that's the thing. I mean, the next up it is a trip down to Bordeaux, which hasn't been happy hunting ground for English teams in recent years on the men's side. Not necessarily the women's side, against a pretty good French side who are very physical, Sam. And I mean, that's one thing you look at it. I mean, you look at their second rows in particular. I mean, they are monstrously huge, taking a bit of the blueprint from the men's game, I think, in so much as that they're going to have big physical specimens who are just going to bat you. And then you got that snipey little scrum half, and I mean, I don't like scrum halves in particular, but French scrum halves I really do have an issue with. And it goes back to the days of Pierre Berbizier, that does, I mean, there's a player who needed a snout, and but such is, this going to be, we've played these 4 games building up to this. This is going to be a big test, isn't it? And we've got to put our best side out against them, regardless of that is.
Yeah, but look, it's 2 of the top 3 teams in the world going head to head. I mean, the people that organised the fixtures probably had an inkling what was happening, funnily enough, and I put this game last. But you know what? If you want to be in the top 3, do what the French do. Get the big girls out there, like you say, physical presence. You're going to win more than you lose until you play England or New Zealand, who have got a bit of nous, who have got a bit of tactical awareness, who have got the skills to not worry too much, and have got the defensive organisation. I think this is the key as well. when you've got a physical team, I mean, you remember, didn't you, Jez, when you're playing amateur rugby, and one week you could be playing the best team in the world, next week you could be playing the worst team you've ever played, and that's just, such as amateur rugby. When you do play against the weaker teams, the reason why you run riot is because of the initial break, and then the other team doesn't know what to do about it, and that's how potentially this French team has got to where it is. It's made those breaks, and then the other teams haven't got the secondary ability to then make up for it. England aren't going to have that problem. Those breaks are going to happen because they're going to bring the big guns in, and they're going to try and bulldoze holes in the back line. But England have got something that those other teams in the Six Nations don't have, and that is they're serious professional rugby players, and you can't just bulldoze a serious professional rugby team. Sorry, and I think England win that game. And you're right, we put our best team out because France are no pushovers, literally with a size. But England win that game if we play 80% well enough.
Yeah, well, I'm going to have my half glass full there and agree with you on that one, Sam. Sam, I will say thank you very much for your time this evening. A fascinating chat. Nice to put you two together, despite the fact that it caused me inordinate problems, Norris and Mickle.
And me, because I didn't know if you were saying M or N. So
it doesn't help. It doesn't help. That did not help at all.
That's not made it any easier, has it? Let's be honest.
It could only be
You're allowed
worse
to give us silly names. You're allowed to give us silly nicknames from now on.
It would only be worse if your surname began with an H. Because that's not even in my alphabet. That. But look, we're going to come back next week on the 20th, following a game against Gloucester Rugby for the men, and obviously the Women's Six Nations culmination. So I'll probably try and get hold of Alex for next week, see her thoughts on that, and then we'll be joined by whoever else is on it. But in the meantime, I say, Sam, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your input. Fascinating chat. And thank you everybody for listening in. And thank you everybody for your 3-word reviews. And I will say there was Matt Miller did ask us to discuss a point all about bonus points and everything. So I'm going to put it out to Matt. If you want to come on in a future show and put your point of view about bonus points, because I think we've gone on a bit too long on this show, get in touch with us. Drop me a note, drop Matt a note, drop whoever a note. And we'll have you on to discuss your idea about why bonus points for teams being within 7 points are an annoyance to you, and what you do to change that all about. That'd be a really good show for the future. Until then, all the best everybody. Thank you for your time, and we'll speak to you next week.
This is the Fezcast.